Chloë Sevigny played Kitty Menendez on Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. And Chloe, now that you've had some time since this show premiered on Netflix, what does the phenomenon became mean to you? People were really invested in this series.
I think people were invested because it was also coming back in the media and people were learning about it for the first time, also remembering kind of having heard about it when it happened and revisiting it. And I think Dahmer had been such a phenomenon that there was like this expectation for the second season of Monster and what that would look like. And I think people probably were thinking something similar to what they saw in Dahmer was going to happen. And then Ryan Murphy way that he likes to kind of flipped it on its head and was like, no, the season is not about one monster. This is about, everybody is the monster. We're going to tell this story through different people's perspectives and through different lenses and and tell in a very different way with lots of quick cuts and montages and music and whereas Dahmer was very still and there's a lot of locked off camera and this had a lot of movement. So I think that he likes to defy expectations and that's a really exciting thing about working with him. But I think people were just, I mean, of course people are endlessly occupied and enthralled and curious about people who have this kind of privilege and how they abuse it and how these boys that have everything, how does this kind of unfurl and how does this happen to them and did it really happen to them and it's kind of a mystery, but also kind of like it just has a lot of things happening. I'm not articulating very well, but I think there's just a lot to dig into, and I think a lot of people then also can take a stance, like they're just saying that happened, or yes, it really happened, and so I think people also get excited when they can have an opinion in that way.
Well, I'm part of the mystery were the parents because I mean, Eric and Lyle were so public in the 90s and the trial, but we didn't know Jose and especially Kitty. I mean, Jose was a prominent figure. What was it like peeling back her story and what was your process like in learning about her?
And there really wasn't a lot about her, unfortunately. There was a couple books that I read that talked about her upbringing and that her father had been abusive, and so that was a real key into her, into how how she behaved with Jose, and how she kind of allowed it, and how she kind of self medicated, and her mother had left her father, and so then she grew up without one, and maybe this is why she kind of stood by her man. Um, and also kind of like how one navigates that when one grew up with it and how one normalizes it and isolates and all these kinds of things that happen when one is living in like a cycle of abuse. And then of course I read the Dominic Dunn pieces for Vanity Fair, and those were very kind of pro Kitty, where at first I was just thinking of her as just like this monster, and then I was like, how am I going to access this person who doesn't have one truth? Because every episode is like a different person's truth about her. And so I was just trying to find a way to ground her in each episode. And even if she's being a monster saying, I hate my kids and they're horrible and, they came between me and my husband and this and that, I try to think about like women that are feeling that way. And I think that it's like a taboo that a lot of women don't talk about. A lot of women like feel like the children come between them and their partners and, or, anybody with a child, be it, a woman or a man, I think. And like children can come between partners and you can also be scared of your children, especially when they're as big and, imposing as those boys were and how small Kitty was. And I just thought it was an opportunity to explore those kinds of feelings that you don't get to hear a lot about on television or in the movies.
That's why I loved the therapy sessions or the marriage counseling when her and Jose, what was it like filming that and kind of getting to the truth, at least their truth of
Uh-huh.
what was going on and her sort of speaking on his behalf a little bit about the abuse that he suffered and his reaction to her.
But she's trying to lead him into saying, of course, because he's not, he's very bottled up, he's very Latin, he's very masculine, and she's just trying to to find some relief for her family. She's trying to, like, save her family, and she doesn't know what to do or how to do it. I mean, she's really at a loss, and like in the bedroom scene where she's trying to kind of confront him about whether or not he does it. And she tries a few times throughout the season, in like a timid, kind of way, a submissive way. And I think she's also a product of her times. Like, women weren't as empowered then. What was she going to do if she left? You know what I mean? I think that's also like kind of what victims of abuse fall into in these cycles of just having like very little options. So yeah, exploring those scenes, with Javier was very generous and very sweet, of course. And when he's acting, it's terrifying. It's not kind of hard to play scared when his anger, bubbles up, because he was very good at playing that. But on the first day of shooting, or actually it was the first day of rehearsals, he came in and Ryan talked about the show and an overview and what he wanted to do and how he wanted to tell the story. And, I was like, each character in the media and everybody else is kind of a monster in the show, and very different from Dahmer. And then Javier kind of spoke to everyone in the room and the actors, but just a few of us, and was saying like why he wanted to do it and what he wanted to bring to it. It really opened up a conversation for us all to feel like we could access him, because he was a really big movie star, in the room, and especially with Nicholas and Cooper. And he was so generous with them, really bullying them, like yelling and screaming and getting them to play and access parts they didn't think they even had in them, and like really like but then also like hugging them right after and like being very paternal. He has two kids. He loves his kids. He talks about them all the time. And he brought that to Nicholas and Cooper, who, was a big deal for them to have these parts and, kind of their first big roles, and a lot of responsibility, and, a lot of big acting, and he really helped them and helped everybody, and just, elevated the whole experience and project.
Yeah, I spoke to Cooper. I mean, I spoke to all of them, and they spoke about how big of an impact Javier had on them, but you as well. I mean, they said two icons were in the room. I mean, so you also had a part in that. And what was it like seeing these two guys? Because they were not brand new to acting, but this really blew them up. I mean, they're huge stars now. So what was it like? Could you see that happening in their performances while you were there, or is that just not something you think about?
I could see it in their performances and also just who they are as people. I mean, they're both really, really bright young men, and really thoughtful, and like have really high levels of like emotional intelligence. And just like seeing them navigate press, I was like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I can't do it like you two can. Like, just they're very confident in their ideas and what they have to say. And it's really impressive the way they navigate all of it. I was like, do you guys have media training? Because I want that training too. Just like, um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, because I was there and I saw how great they were, and I just knew people would be, the media, and people would, be attracted to him and Cooper and how he is about his sexuality. And I feel like that's kind of something you don't see a lot. And also how involved he is with the real Eric and Lyle, and outspoken he is about that. I think people find that refreshing. I think a lot of, younger stars, or even anybody navigating, press and media right now, are a little tentative to speak out, because, you can find yourself, getting in trouble quite easily. And I think that they aren't afraid of that, and I think it's refreshing.
And you all were able to find this really good dysfunctional family uh, chemistry. I mean, one of the first scenes that I understand that you filmed together was that dinner scene. What was that like for you to have such a volatile scene right off the bat and ripping the wig off Lyle's head? That was a heartbreaking scene.
I know. I think that she was just, well, she was trying to normalize, obviously. I think she was self-medicating. She was drinking a lot, and numbing herself to what was happening. And I think she was also just tired of everybody, like, being dismissive of her. And she knew what was happening, and she knew that, Lyle didn't know that she knew, and this was some sort of little gleam of power she could have in that situation, and she was gonna, take advantage of it. And there are very few moments where she gets to do that. And so yeah, it was one of the first days, and it was pretty emotional. I mean, the whole shoot was, but luckily we would, we'd go back to our trailers, and me and Cooper would chat, or, the boys, and we had this really like loving crew that was really, made us all feel really like protected, and we are in this like little cocoon of warmth and coziness, and then going in and being horrible.
What was like the most demanding scene for you, do you feel like? Or was there a scene that felt like particularly difficult to shoot?
I mean, there are the scenes where she was younger and maybe knew something was happening and like would turn away and not go in or try and stop it, or like, and they weren't necessarily demanding as far as like acting, just accessing and thinking about how one would ever do that. Or it's just disturbing to think that happens. And like, like, yeah, just thinking, you of course will, trying to make it as grounded and as real as possible. And, accessing that means, reading about real cases of that, or just thinking about it. And that's just disturbing.
We spoke about Ryan Murphy a little bit, but did he approach you with this role? Because you'd have worked with him before in American Horror Story, and then obviously Capote versus the Swans as well. Everyone goes back to Ryan Murphy. Like people just, and he keeps asking people, like he has multiple actors that he just wants to work with again and again. What is
Uh,
it about that relationship?
well, there's so many great filmmakers that I love that do the same, from like Fassbender to Scorsese, um, so on and so forth. The list goes on, Coen Brothers. So, but I think that he just likes having this true. I think that like it helps the actors because they feel really more confident going into, pushing themselves in these more challenging performances, because they know that he knows them firsthand. He's worked with them. He knows what they can bring to it. Like CZ Guest could not be any more different from Kitty Menendez. But we had just wrapped that, and I think we might have even been on set still when he said, "I have this new project I'm working on. I have you in mind for this character." And he told me a bit about it. I was like, "What?" I was like, you think I'm right for that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think you'll bring a lot of weight to it, and we need that, and I want you for this part." And of course I mean, I was flattered, and I had watched Dahmer and thought it was incredible. And um yeah, it was, just of course I'm an actress. I love working. I want to work, and I want to challenge myself. And so I signed on.
What was it like filming the actual murder scene? Because that was like physical, and she was shot multiple times and did not immediately die. That was a rough scene to watch, and I would imagine it was difficult to shoot.
Yeah, I think we rehearsed it for like 2 days and then shot it for 2 days. And then we would kind of go back to it, and kind of reenact it a little bit and in other episodes. Um, so that was really just a bizarre, because you don't normally shoot like a scene in that kind of way. You know what I mean? Where you go back and there's different versions of it. Um, but I'm at the end, because it was so physical, I had to have Ryan's come and work on me, because I had been like jerking around so much. I was like, it was really took a toll on me physically. And the noise, like, because they were shooting blanks, it was just so loud. And the smell of it, I was at the end of the first day, I was wrecked, like really shaken up, and like, just like it was. But then you kind of become numb to it, which is also like kind of more disturbing in a way. And um it was hard on the boys, so we tried to like make it less hard on us, so it wasn't as like disturbing for them. um so yeah, Javier and I feel like we were taking a lot of punches to like ease it up for the younger guys.
What did you make of the final scene with Jose and Kitty on the boat? And like it was sort of like this hopeful image of their future they had in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I love that scene. It's like one of the only times where you see Kitty like really smiling and happy and optimistic. And and talking about what she wants and them being like in love and tender with each other. And it's just nice to play like a different color, like after, playing certain things, the entire show. And of course, that's, a device to, make people then, mourn them even, more. And oh, I wish that maybe there had been other opportunities to have them throughout, and I felt like that was like the most kind of alive and sparkly you ever got to see them.
You've done so many great projects throughout your career, but it is the 25th anniversary now of American Psycho.
Mm. The
And
30th of Kids this
and
summer.
and I grew up on Kids. I mean, that was your first movie. What was it like to be on your first movie?
I mean, well, Harmony was my best friend and he had written it, and all the kids that were like kids I knew basically from like hanging around in at the park in the city, except for Rosario. She was kind of the only one we didn't really know. And then for it to become this like phenomenon was like, unfortunately, we have to give Miramax, I feel like, a lot of credit for that. And like the 90s Miramax publicity machine, which was like no other we've ever seen since, they were like kind of old Hollywood in that way that they could make something really, an event. And how they marketed it and rolled it out. Like they went to Cannes, but they didn't bring any of the kids because they wanted everybody to think the kids were still on the street and that it was like a documentary, and they made it like a must-see thing. And I mean, it was surprising that it became such a thing and that it's still a thing is like
It's a
incredible.
classic. I mean, it's a classic.
A lot of kids are like, that's why I moved to New York. I'm like, really? That make you want to move to New York?
Well, it's because they weren't so like they were not cookie cutter. I mean, it was seeing kids being kids how kids see them, not how adults sort of wish they were.
Yeah. I mean, I love, I mean, there's so many great, you know, teen films that I love, like Over the Edge or River's Edge, and that I feel like have a little bit of that edge. Christiane F. And so just to be a part of something that's touched so many people still feels great. And American Psycho and Boys Don't Cry and so much of my early work, I feel like still means a lot to people. And I mean, it's kind of like if I never acted again, I'd be okay with like having the impact that I've already had. But I love acting, so I keep trying, and I keep hoping, to get cast in more style in the next Luca Guadagnino movie after The Hunt, and this will be my third time working with him, and I think that movie's going to be really incredible and a little controversial, which I guess just keeps happening to me.
You do not
Um,
shy away from controversial movies.
I think people just cast me and they're like, oh, she's that person, or I don't know why. But stars Julia Roberts, so it can't be that controversial. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just, I'm grateful to still be working with incredible people, and I have two independent movies out now with young female directors, and still trying, to work with, fresh faces, new people that have, new exciting ideas and ideas about filmmaking or storytelling. And so I'm just very grateful to still be here.